Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters, and Husqvarna Viking, keeping the world sewing for over 140 years. Hi, and welcome to Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community. I'm Mary Kate Karr-Petras, and I'm here with our creative editor, Lori Baker. Hi, Lori.
Hello.
So Lori's here today to talk about something that we deal with fairly regularly on staff, which is auditioning fabric for quilt blocks or for quilts, which is something that all quilters do. But you know, we make blocks pretty often for our staff picks section, or the blocks that we have normally dressing our set or things like that. And so auditioning fabrics when we're working with a specific collection is something that we do. And you're here to kind of walk us through one of your recent experiences auditioning fabrics for a block.
Right. So I'm going to make a block, and I started out with one of our special issues from like 10 years ago.
Right.
And decided this is the block I wanted to do, but not in those colors.
Did you already have the collection picked out before you picked
Yes,
the pattern?
I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did. So this is my collection of fabric. So from this picture, I went ahead and drew a full-size block in the colors of the fabric collection that I was going to use.
And this was just, there are a few blacks in there in that collection.
Right.
There are a few pinks. There, you know, you had choices, but you knew that this was the contrast and the general distribution that you were going for.
That's right. So then, using the templates, I cut out the blocks, the patches for the block, and put it on the design wall. And at that point,
and these are the fabrics that you had chosen.
This is the fabric color scheme that I had chosen. I started looking at that, and I'm not really thrilled with it. This little gray print is a really, really pretty print, but the pieces are so small that what you see is just kind of muddled.
Yeah, you lose the interest of
Exactly.
of the print, and there's not enough of it to really offset or give your eye a resting place amongst all the other busyness of the prints.
That's right. And I also didn't like the fact that this is the same print as this.
Right.
It's just a different color. And that's not as interesting as it could be. So I started making changes, and the first thing I did was, there was another fabric in the collection that had a perfect opportunity for doing some fussy cutting and really getting a pretty thing going on. I also liked when I put this in what happened to the contrast.
Yeah.
It looks much blacker.
Huge difference, yeah.
So it made a big difference in the contrast.
And you can make use of that, the direction of the print to make it take advantage of that nice long patch.
Right. You do need to remember that when you start fussy cutting a fabric, you sometimes really use up a lot of fabric.
Yes,
So,
yes. But that's okay, more scraps for the scrap bag.
That's right. Now, at about this point in time, Susan and Kath, our art team, came into the sewing room and started making suggestions for me. And it was really interesting to watch how their minds worked. And the first thing they picked up on was this gray that's just lost. And they said, try the green for that gray. So that's what I did. It's always interesting to me to see what happens when somebody else starts giving their ideas.
Yes. And when it comes to color and stuff, I always listen to them because they're the artists.
They're
and,
wonderful.
Yeah, they've got a great design sense and they know what they are doing.
Okay, I'm liking what happens because this is a much smaller print, so it shows off better. But at the same time, I'm not liking what happens because now I've got green here and green here.
And it's just a lot.
And it's a lot of green.
And you're losing the impact of the other fabrics.
That's right.
Plus, it's a lot of print going on in one small place.
I like the blocks to have a more defined edge when there's something like this, a border kind of feel. So we decided to go ahead and try that gray print that we just covered up, because our pieces are much bigger here. So that pretty print shows off.
Yeah, it's nice. And I like to mention that this is a technique that Kath and Susan, our art directors, use in their own quilt making, and as well as the blocks that they make for the magazine. They cut, maybe they don't cut all of the patches for a block as they're going, but they'll cut swatches and they'll put them up on the design wall, and they stand back and they take a look, and they maybe leave it up until the following day, and they come back with fresh eyes, and they do really think and observe.
And it makes a huge difference. Yeah. I'm much more inclined to, I started this today, so I'm going to keep going. And sometimes later I look and think, you know, I wish I had thought of this. And if I'd let it sit overnight, I would have thought of that different idea, and it would have been a better quilt.
You know, I'm with you. I'm usually, just because my time is limited, it's like, I have 2 hours to make this block that's due tomorrow, and my children are asleep, so I have to finish it now.
I have to do this now while there's a chunk of time.
But I do take my, maybe my fat quarters, and I fan them out, and I do lay them next to each other, you know, and I think about, I try to envision what it might look like in the block, which is not always reliable, but you know, there is a thinking process that goes on without going as far as, now see, that is beautiful.
Isn't that nice?
That just really sings, and it really grabs you even from across the room. It's so striking, and it lets the pink really jump out, and the green does its job, and then the turquoise, and it's really lovely. And our finished product looks like something like this.
And quite a bit different than what I had colored out. So well worth the time to play on the design wall.
Now, if you were planning an entire quilt, what would you do? I mean, you would do a block, because you like to sew a block to begin with.
I like to sew a block, and that's actually to test sizes and that sort of thing.
Are you thinking about color, and are you auditioning fabric at that same time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then typically what I would do is multiply that block electronically.
Okay, because you like to work in EQ.
I play in EQ a lot. Now, I don't necessarily scan those exact fabrics, but I would have a black and a turquoise, and then I'd see if it looked pretty as a whole quilt.
But for this purpose, you even, you know, you took out paper and pencil,
Yeah.
and you drafted the block full size
Yep.
and colored it in. So if you don't have software, EQ is not the only
That's
software
right.
out there, but if you don't have software that can facilitate this, this is a great way of auditioning fabrics before you cut into something that's really precious.
Right. That's right. And some of them are. Some of our fabrics we don't want to cut until we're sure we've got exactly the right
Especially if
plan.
it's out of print. You bought it a few years ago.
Yes.
You're finally making the decision to use it. You really want to make sure it's going to sing.
That's right.
In your quilt, and
That's
not just
right.
sort of go, wah, wah.
Exactly.
My favorite sound effect of all time. Well, that's fantastic. It's a great lesson, and something that we should all be using when we're planning our quilts, or even if it's just one block.
That's right.
It's a fun lesson. Thanks so much, Lori. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye. Quilters Newsletter TV, the quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters, and Husqvarna Viking, keeping the world sewing for over 140 years.